welcome to the 25th anniversary of the Asia Risk Awards. I'm joined this afternoon with the winner of the Cyber Risk Solution of the Year Award, Mr. Tony Dieppe, Regional Director for Southeast Asia at GBG, and Mr. Yo, Senior Vice President of Retail Banking Fraud Management at AmBank. First question I'd like to ask you, gentlemen, is what have GBG and AmBank brought to the table as the winner of Cyber Risk Solution of the Year in terms of innovation, and what makes you really a pioneer?
We are proud to say that AmBank is one of the first, if not the first, to have an end-to-end fraud cyber risk solution in Malaysia. And we have used this solution for a year, and it has proven to be effective. And for the past 6 months, there's a record that we have saved the customers about 2.7 million Malaysian ringgit until today.
Tony, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Being on online channels comes the exposure and vulnerability to cyber risk and attacks, right? So GBG's cyber risk and fraud management platform is actually innovated to identify and seamlessly assimilate a layer of defense, incorporating cyber data, for example, or the device fingerprint that we can use to identify someone who's a machine or a device that's accessing the bank's portals, IP intelligence. And at AmBank, we detect all sorts of risks and threats like the presence of malware, bot attacks, the use of emulators, etc., or even any type of suspicious or compromised devices, right? And we couple this with the traditional behavioral analytics of the fraud aspects of transactions. So transaction monitoring, coupling that with all the cyber risk. That's what we're bringing and pioneering, unifying all this data intelligence that hasn't really been done before. Traditionally, a lot of work between cybersecurity and the fraud risk unit work quite separately, I would say. So we're actually bridging that together because there's a lot of fraud topologies and fraud scenarios and use cases that can be identified once you start sharing this intelligence.
How important are cyber risk solutions, particularly in the current year, in the current environment, and also for emerging markets in Asia?
For AmBank, we see that most banks are rapidly going into digitalized transformations. And in fact, the central bank has been pushing all the transactions to go online. While we do see a lot of rising trends of fraud, especially in Malaysia particularly, we have fraud like Macau scams, and then we have a lot of social engineering frauds coming every now and then.
Tony, do you have anything to add to that?
Yep. So I believe it's obviously very important. It's one of the key risk concerns in banks when we work with them, and they're pursuing the journey of digital transformation. So across APAC, one of the most challenging factors that we see growing in online transactions is preventing new types of cyber fraud attacks and cyber threats. Okay, and we've had obviously quite an increase in number of inquiries looking at our existing customers who are using fraud solutions, fraud management solutions, looking at enhancing or upgrading their solutions to incorporate this new layer of cyber data, which is quite important to identify online transactions and really understand, is it really the genuine customer that's doing this, or is it a compromise or account takeover? Okay, and how in terms of emerging markets, I would say quite a lot of markets, country markets in Southeast Asia, there is quite a big segment of the unbanked or underbanked market, which have a really key focus on doing things online. Like Indonesia, for example, is one of the highest underbanked population, together with Vietnam and Thailand as well. So where consumer data is pretty much absent or fragmented, like the thin file for credit bureau is not existing for new to credit. then it's easier for cyber criminals to create fraud in a onboarding and the transaction level. So this is where we aim to support the banks in these markets.
That's great. Mr. Yo, what's next for AmBank in the horizon for the firm's cyber risk solutions, in the future over the next 12 months?
Yes, we are looking into updating and also enhancing our machine learning. And on top of that, we are expanding the fraud detection from the non-retail to more on the more on the SME and corporate side. We want to see a real end-to-end, not only in retail banking, but for the whole banking industry for AmBank and also for the AmBank Group. Malaysia has come out, in fact, with, we call it the Risk Management in Technology, the RMIT, which is drafted by the central bank. They have come out with a very comprehensive guide on how cyber fraud and cyber risk should be addressed. In fact, there's a mandate that all internet banking must have a cyber solution in the bank.
Thank you, Mr. Yo. Tony, do you have anything to add to that?
From what we've seen and observed, from 2020, where we've been hit pretty much by the COVID, global discussion, right? So the impact has actually seen more people spend more time online than ever before, right? And many of us have now adopted online and mobile banking, making online purchases and so on, right? So on this, with this current global landscape, has actually provided or pretty much gifted the cyber criminals and hackers a perfect hunting ground, right? In terms of the cyber risk and cyber attacks. And obviously, as us, the actual genuine consumers, pretty much handed over a constant supply of potential unsuspecting targets and victims to these criminals. So in terms of cyber security cases have spiked during this pandemic period as well. We've seen that from customers and from reports, from media. Most cases have mainly involved fraud and intrusion, which includes things like hacking and data breaches, quite common. And some examples of online fraud cases, through working with customers like Mr. Yo and AmBank, includes phishing, malware, or even ransomware, scams, and lots of social engineering, with scams, tactics to actually deceive vulnerable victims to obtain their sensitive information. And of course, leading to account takeover and compromised accounts, okay? That's a big risk and a big concern as well. Now, most of us require, even ourselves require the internet to perform our work or do our tasks like banking, for example. So we're actually quite vulnerable to cyber attacks.
Thank you, Tony. I think to your point, in these difficult times, it's even more and more important, and it's great to be recognized, I guess, for that work that you're doing, for the award, and also providing such great service for clients such as AmBank. Thank you both, and congratulations once again, GBG, on the win.
Thank you, Marcel. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcel, for your time, and thank you, Asia Risk.
Yes.
Yep.